She knocked on our door one rainy evening, hair-drenched, voice soft, and eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read, something between sadness and hunger. I remember her exact words like they were etched into my mind. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm just lonely." And in that moment, we let her in, not just into our home, but into our lives. What started as a kind gesture quickly turned into something we never saw coming. Looking back, I wish I had trusted my gut. But sometimes, kindness blinds you more than any lie ever could. My wife, Amina, was the first to warm up to her. She said every woman deserves a safe place to land, and I agreed. After all, she was a single woman in her mid-30s with no family around, just a few boxes and a past she didn't talk much about. She introduced herself as Rachel, charming, graceful, with a soft-spoken sadness that made you feel sorry for her. My kids liked her instantly. And slowly, without us realizing, she blended into our daily life. Morning coffee with Amina, late-night chats on the porch, helping my daughter with her homework. It felt nice at first, normal. Almost too normal. But then little things started to change. The kind you notice only when it's too late. Amina grew quieter. The kids started acting distant with me. And Rachel, she seemed to know exactly when to show up with just the right words. Her presence went from being comforting to confusing. I couldn't explain it, but something in the air felt off. I started questioning myself. Was I imagining things? Was I being paranoid? Or was this woman, who once said she was just lonely, planting seeds of something darker? There were moments, short, sharp moments, where her mask slipped. A glance too cold, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, a comment that didn't sit right. And yet, she always had a way of covering it up with just enough charm. I tried to talk to Amina about it, but she brushed it off. Said I was overthinking. That Rachel had been nothing but kind. But kindness shouldn't come with confusion. It shouldn't pull people apart. And soon, I realized the woman we let in wasn't lonely. She was calculated. Careful. And she was weaving herself into our lives in a way we couldn't untangle. This story isn't just about a guest who overstayed her welcome. It's about emotional destruction that sneaks in slowly, disguised as friendship, sympathy, and harmless help. It's about a family that didn't see the storm coming because it didn't look like a storm. It looked like a woman who just needed a place to stay. But what Rachel really needed was something far more dangerous. And by the time we figured it out, it was already too late. Because what happened next shattered everything. A few weeks after Rachel moved in, our home started to feel different. Not broken, just quieter, like the kind of silence that follows a storm no one saw. Amina, who once filled the kitchen with laughter, now spent hours sitting quietly with Rachel, sipping tea and whispering like teenagers sharing secrets. I wanted to believe it was innocent, that Amina just found someone to talk to. But deep down, something didn't sit right. Rachel never talked much about her past, but when she did, it always had this tragic, unfinished edge to it. She told us her parents were gone, that she had no siblings, no one to turn to. She painted herself as a survivor of emotional abandonment, a woman who'd been tossed aside by life. And honestly, who wouldn't feel sorry for someone like that? My wife did. My kids did. And I tried. But the more I listened, the more it felt rehearsed, like she knew exactly what to say to pull you in. Then came the little changes in our routine. Rachel started doing things that felt too personal. Folding my clothes, rearranging kitchen cabinets, giving me unsolicited advice about how to better connect with my kids. She'd smile when I looked confused, acting like she was just helping, just being thoughtful. But to me, it felt like she was quietly taking control. And no one else seemed to notice. I'd come home from work and find Rachel sitting in the living room, my daughter leaning against her shoulder, while Amina cooked dinner alone. My son, once eager to share his day with me, now spoke less and less. And every time I tried to bring it up, Amina would defend her. She's just trying to help. Why are you being so cold? That question still echoes in my head. Because I wasn't being cold, I was being pushed out. And I didn't know why. Or by whom. Not yet. I started watching her more closely, not out of anger, but confusion. There was something too perfect about the way she moved through our home. Always present but never loud. Always helpful, but in ways that made me feel less needed. One evening, I overheard her laughing with Amina in the kitchen. It was a laugh I hadn't heard from my wife in months. The sound of it stung more than I expected. It wasn't jealousy, it was something else. Like I was slowly becoming invisible in my own home. Then came the missing pieces. Amina forgot our anniversary, something she never once missed in 15 years. When I brought it up, she blinked at me, distracted, as if her mind was somewhere else. I've just had a lot on my plate, she said, glancing toward the hallway where Rachel had just passed. My daughter stopped asking me for bedtime stories. My son started locking his door more often. Every connection I had in that house felt like it was slipping through my hands. One night, I walked into the living room and found Rachel sitting alone, flipping through our family photo album. She looked up, smiled, and said, "You're lucky to have all this." I never did. Her voice was calm, but her fingers lingered too long on the photos, especially the ones of Amina. I didn't know what to say. There was nothing wrong in her words, but everything felt wrong about the way she said them. I began checking her social media, trying to piece together her life before us. But nothing added up. The accounts were clean, too clean. No real friends, no family photos, no memories beyond a year ago. It was like Rachel didn't exist before us. And that terrified me. Things reached a boiling point the night I came home early from work. The house was too quiet. I walked in expecting the usual, Rachel in the kitchen, Amina in the living room, the kids in their rooms. But instead, I found the lights dimmed, music playing softly, and Rachel sitting alone on the couch wearing one of Amina's shawls. She looked up at me like she'd been waiting. I asked where everyone was, and she calmly said, "They're out. Just us tonight." My heart pounded. Something was off, too staged, too strange. I tried to brush past her, pretend everything was fine, but she stood and blocked the hallway. "Why don't you ever talk to me?" she asked, her voice low but sharp. "I'm here every day. I've done everything for your family, and still, you treat me like I don't exist." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just walked past her, trying to keep my head clear, but her words kept echoing. I checked the kids' rooms, empty. Amina's phone rang when I called, but it went straight to voicemail. That's when fear really crept in. Not just confusion or suspicion, real fear. Because suddenly, it felt like I wasn't in control of my home anymore. Like someone else had taken over the wheel while I was busy pretending everything was okay. That night, I barely slept. I waited up until Amina came home with the kids, all of them acting like it was just another normal evening. But something in her eyes was different. Distant. Like she was there, but already gone. And Rachel, standing quietly in the hallway behind her, just smiled at me like she'd won something I didn't know I was losing. And that's when I realized, this wasn't about kindness or loneliness anymore. It was a takeover. The next morning, something even stranger happened. My daughter, who had been distant for weeks, came into my room and sat quietly on the edge of the bed. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at the floor. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "Daddy, do you like Rachel more than Mommy now?" The question hit me like a punch to the chest. I shook my head, completely thrown. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to stay calm. She shrugged, still not looking at me. "She told me you'd be happier with someone who actually listens to you. Someone who understands you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Rachel had been speaking to my daughter behind our backs, planting ideas, reshaping her thoughts, turning the people I loved most against me. This wasn't just about quiet manipulation anymore. She was rewiring our family from the inside. That same day, I tried confronting Amina. I told her what our daughter had said, how Rachel was changing the atmosphere in the house. But instead of being shocked, Amina looked torn. "She's just been supportive," she said slowly, not meeting my eyes. "When I felt alone, she was there. You weren't." Her words stung more than I expected, but I realized something deeper. Rachel had found every crack in our marriage and started digging. She didn't force herself into our lives. She slipped in through the spaces we left open. The second twist came days later when I finally reached out to a friend of mine, someone who worked in background checks. I gave him Rachel's full name, the one she gave us. That night, he called back. "There's no trace of her," he said. "Nothing under that name. No past addresses, no school records, no employment history. Either she's using a fake identity, or she's hiding something much bigger." I didn't tell Amina. I didn't know how. But from that moment, I stopped sleeping properly. I started locking my things. Watching every move Rachel made. Because now, it wasn't just about protecting my family from emotional destruction. It felt like something darker. Something real. Something dangerous. And I was completely alone in seeing it. I waited for the right moment. Amina and the kids had gone out for the afternoon, and Rachel was home alone. I had one chance to get answers. I walked into the living room where she sat, reading one of my wife's books like it belonged to her. She looked up and smiled, but this time, I didn't return it. I calmly said, "I know Rachel isn't your real name. And I know you've been lying to us from the start." Her smile faded, just for a second. Then she leaned back and crossed her arms. "So, what are you going to do?" she asked, voice still calm but colder than ever. I told her I wanted the truth. No more games. No more pretending. That's when something in her shifted. She stood slowly and said, "Fine. You want the truth? Your perfect little family was already broken. I didn't ruin anything. I just walked through the door you left wide open." Her words shook me more than I expected. Because deep down, part of me knew she was right. We'd been drifting long before she showed up. But what she did was take advantage of that space and twist it into something ugly. She admitted she had done this before, inserted herself into families, filling a gap they didn't even realize was there. "It's not about destroying anything," she said. "It's about reminding people what they've lost." That's when Amina walked in, holding the door open. She had heard everything. She didn't say a word, just stared at Rachel in silence. And Rachel, knowing it was over, simply walked past her and out the door. No screaming, no drama. Just a quiet exit, like a shadow fading from the room. We never saw her again. No calls. No messages. It was like she vanished. Slowly, things started to mend. Amina and I talked, really talked, for the first time in months. The kids slowly warmed back up to me. We began rebuilding. But just when I thought it was finally over, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, my family, taken from outside the window. She may have left our house. But she was still watching. Holding that photo in my hands, I felt a chill run down my spine. The angle, the timing, it had been taken recently, after she left. I didn't show it to the kids. I didn't want to scare them. But I did show Amina. She stared at it for a long time without saying anything, then quietly placed it back in the envelope and burned it in the fireplace. "We move on," she said. And we did. Slowly. Carefully. One step at a time. We changed the locks. We installed cameras. But more importantly, we started reconnecting. Amina and I made a habit of sitting together after dinner, just talking, no phones, no distractions. The kids opened up again, little by little. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. The damage Rachel left behind wasn't just about what she did, it was about what she exposed. We had allowed distance to grow between us, and she walked right into that gap. She didn't create the cracks, she just knew exactly where to push. For months, I kept checking the mail, half expecting another letter. But nothing came. No signs, no messages, no new photos. It was as if she had moved on to another family, another story, another quiet home with open doors. And maybe that's what haunted me most, knowing she was out there, watching, waiting for the next opportunity to slip in. But over time, fear turned into clarity. What happened to us wasn't just about a stranger who came to stay. It was about how easily love and trust can be shaken when we stop paying attention to one another. Rachel didn't destroy us, we nearly did that ourselves. She just sped it up. And in a strange, painful way, her presence forced us to fight for what mattered most. Now, when I tell people this story, I don't do it out of bitterness. I do it to remind others to protect what they love. Pay attention. Communicate. Because emotional destruction doesn't always arrive with chaos. Sometimes, it walks in with a smile and says, "I'm just lonely." And that's how everything changed. Quietly. Permanently. And in a way, it saved us by nearly tearing us apart. 51.